Okay, let's get into this. We're doing a deep dive today, looking at a really key moment from these historical accounts. It's all about the prophecy made when Prince Siddhartha was born.
Exactly. And this wasn't just some, vague guess. It was a prediction that really set the course for a life that, well, ended up changing everything. We're going to explore that based on the source material we have here.
Yeah, and our mission really is to unpack what that core prediction was according to these texts, and I guess what it all meant right from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. And the sources immediately threw you into this central tension.
Right. It's so stark, isn't it? The accounts lay out these two incredibly different potential futures for one baby. It's kind of amazing.
It really is. And the material paints a picture, takes us right back to the court. You have King Suddhodana obviously keen to know what's in store for his son, his heir,
So he calls in the experts.
the absolute best. Respected scholars, astrologers. These weren't, street corner fortune tellers. The texts emphasize they were highly skilled readers of signs. You can almost feel the king's anticipation in the writing.
He needed to know. He brought in the top people who could interpret destiny based on the beliefs described in these accounts.
Precisely. And what they came back with was, well, extraordinary and probably quite difficult for a king to hear in a way.
Because it wasn't straightforward.
Not at all. The prediction, as these sources lay it out, wasn't just one outcome. It was like a crossroads, a choice almost, determined by circumstances.
Okay, so what was the first path?
The first one was conditional. It depended on Siddhartha staying inside the palace, completely shielded from the world outside, specifically shielded from seeing what they call the foresights.
Which were old age, sickness, death, and a wandering ascetic, right? A religious seeker.
Exactly those four. If he didn't see those things, the prophecy said he'd become a Chakravartin.
A Chakravartin. And the texts explain that means. Like a universal emperor, a massive, powerful ruler.
That's it. Not just a local king, but someone whose power and influence would stretch, potentially, over the entire known world. Immense worldly authority.
Wow. Okay. So, total power, command, glory.
Yeah,
You can see why a king would want that for his son.
absolutely. That's the future King Suddhodana likely dreamed of. The sources really convey the weight of that particular hope, that expectation for his lineage.
The ultimate success for a monarch, really. But you mentioned it was conditional. There was another possibility.
Yes, that's the other side of the coin in this prophecy, as the sources describe it, the alternative path.
Triggered by the opposite condition.
Exactly. Triggered if he did encounter those exact realities of human existence, old age, sickness, death, and that ascetic figure, the very things he was supposed to be shielded from for the first path.
And if you saw those,
Then, the prediction went, he would completely renounce his royal status, give it all up,
give it all up. For what?
to become a great spiritual teacher, a sage, a Buddha, someone who wouldn't conquer the world, but would instead show countless others the way to liberation from suffering.
That is quite the contrast. World emperor versus world renouncer, basically.
It's incredibly dramatic, and the material really emphasizes how this dual prediction immediately set up this fundamental conflict that would define his youth.
And it directly influenced the king's actions, according to these accounts.
Oh, definitely. The sources are quite clear on this. They detail how King Suddhodana went to extreme length to keep Siddhartha inside the palace walls,
Trying to create a bubble.
a perfect bubble, surrounding him only with youth, health, beauty, pleasure, carefully curating everything he saw and experienced.
So the king, based on these texts, was actively trying to manipulate destiny to force the great king outcome.
That's certainly how the narratives present it. He was trying to engineer the circumstances to avoid that second path, to prevent any glimpse of suffering that might lead his son towards spiritual renunciation.
You can almost feel that intense parental drive in the descriptions, can't you? Trying to control everything to ensure what he thought was the best future.
And the accounts stress that the astrologers delivered this prophecy with real conviction. It wasn't presented as a maybe, but as a clear potential outcome based on these specific conditions. That certainty, the texts suggest, must have hung heavy over every choice the king made about his son's life.
It does make you wonder, though, based on what these sources say,
Yeah.
by trying so hard to prevent him from seeing suffering, by creating such an artificial world.
Did he make the eventual encounter even more powerful?
Exactly. Did that extreme sheltering inadvertently make the shock of reality, when he finally saw the foresights, much more profound?
The narratives certainly hint at that possibility. that the stark contrast between his gilded cage and the raw truth of life outside might have intensified the impact. The sources suggest the attempt to control fate might have ironically highlighted the very truths it tried to hide.
So these accounts tell us this prophecy wasn't just predicting two futures. It was highlighting the extraordinary potential everyone saw in this child right from birth.
Absolutely. The potential for immense worldly power or for becoming this guide for humanity towards a completely different kind of freedom.
It's a story that still resonates so strongly today, doesn't it? This idea of one person holding these two immense, almost opposing possibilities.
It really does. The idea of embodying either supreme temporal influence or profound spiritual insight. It's captivating, and these early texts frame that potential perfectly.
Yeah. So this prediction by the astrologers, as it's presented in these historical accounts, it really acts as the perfect setup, doesn't it? A powerful introduction to the incredible life story that follows.
It highlights the huge choice, the fork in the road that lay before him, and sets the stage for the decisions that, according to these narratives, shaped his legacy forever.
It really draws you into an amazing journey of discovery.
It does, both the journey within the story itself and for us, exploring it through these sources.
So thinking about this initial prophecy from the source material and the path Siddhartha eventually took, it leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? Here's a thought for you. How much of our own lives, our own paths, are shaped by the predictions or expectations others place on us, maybe from family or society or just our circumstances? And how much is really down to the choices we make when we actually encounter the world, the suffering, the joys, everything that comes our way?